A good ball played in for Tony Morley. Oh, he missed it! It is! Peekaboo! Villa in the lead!
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to the Villa Forever podcast. I am your host, Chad Williams. Please subscribe and give this video the thumbs up. Make sure to hit the like button. I'm joined by my special guest, Ivan McDouall, who is an author, is an Aston Villa fan, and he is a contributor on the UTV Fan Channel. I'll be interviewing Ivan about his new book that he's released, which is called Only the Real Thing, which is about Aston Villa's successful period in the 1990s with their 2 cup wins in 1994 and 1996. It's a pleasure to have you, Ivan. How are you?
Hello, Chad. Yeah, thank you very much for having me, mate. I'm good. I'm a bit under the weather actually, but I'm not too bad. Really looking forward to the opportunity to talk to you today about the book. Yeah.
Well, you feel better soon.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say before we get started, congratulations on the new book.
It's mad, isn't it? Really. It's been a surreal couple of weeks, like since it first came out, Chad. And I think when you describe me as an author and an Aston Villa fan, I think probably Aston Villa fan first, and have happened to have had the opportunity to write a book about something I love. It's been a mad couple of weeks, but enjoying the ride so far.
It's nice as well to write something about what you're passionate about, something that you enjoy. It's sort of easier to talk about things like that.
Yeah, it does help, and I think that I lived, as you said, the book covers a period of time between 93 and 96, which I lived as a Villa fan and was at both cup finals. And I suppose as a relatively, as a teenager at the time, it was quite a defining part of my life and sort of experiencing Villa as part of that. So then to be able to get to write about it was fantastic.
You got like Ron Atkinson, you had Brian Little. They were sort of the managers during that period. I mean, I look back to that period. It's nostalgic times.
That is the word, Chad. Nostalgia is absolutely the word, and I think that it brought back so many happy memories for me of that time, and like you say about the managers, the players, and I think that often when you first start watching football, that's what defines kind of your love of the club, and for me it was that era. I mean, I first went to Villa Park in 1990. So just at the kind of post Italia 90, really. That kind of captured my imagination. So and went only a few times really, but then obviously in the season that we finished second in the Premier League, then the following year went on to win the first Coca-Cola Cup. And those were times when that was when I suppose I fell in love with our football club, really, Chad. So it was wasn't easy to write a book about it, but it certainly helps when you're something that you're so into,
Well, in 1996, that was the year I was born. The last time we won a trophy.
You make me feel old now, Chad. And the last year we won a trophy. So the year you were born and the last year you won a trophy. That is crazy, isn't it? That it's I think I say in the book, like if someone had told me at Wembley in '96 we just played Leeds off the park, Savo, Taylor, and Dwight York, the goal scorers. If someone had said to me, fast forward 30 years, or just under, and Villa won't have won a major trophy, I'd have thought you're mad. I've been here twice in the past 3 years watching us win the League Cup. It's all ahead of us. So I think it is, and that's why I think that's why the idea of the book came around. Because if you remember, there was a lot of debate, and amongst Villa fans, what would people prefer, to finish in the top 4 or win a trophy? And I just think you can't replicate that idea of winning a trophy. I mean, I'm sorry you've never seen it, Chad, and I hope.
Well, what is trophies? As a fan, in trophies you get memories. You wouldn't see memories as a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at Newcastle yesterday. I mean, I imagine they're still enjoying themselves now. But it's those.
It's incredible.
We've got great memories of the Champions League. Don't get me wrong, but there's something really defining about winning a trophy, and I think that I guess to write a book about it 30 years later shows why that's important. So,
and going back to what you said about Newcastle, I think Aston Villa, they need to take a leaf out of Newcastle's book. Because they can do it. There's no reason why we can't win the FA Cup, sir.
Oh no! Can you imagine, Chad? I mean, it's. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to Preston, and we've got a great opportunity then to get to the semi-final. But we should take nothing for granted. I'm sure that Unai will take it absolutely seriously, though, and I think that there was you could tell what it meant for a lot of people yesterday with Newcastle fans. That you can only imagine if that was us in Wembley in May. But let's see what happens.
See what happens. That would be special. I mean, if you want to Unai Emery, that's all that's missing. The trophy. I think he will get it.
Yeah. Keep the faith, though, Chad. Keep the faith.
That's what you got to do. So how long did it take to do the research and write the book?
Gosh, well, in some ways, the research was actually the harder and the longer process, because as much as we've said about having, when you love something, you think you remember it, but you don't remember all of it. And there are so many facts and sort of niche stuff around certain games or certain players, like when what the lineups were for certain games. So that took me a long time to kind of get all that straight in my head, because I think you often sort of remember certain games in a certain way and then realize that actually maybe that wasn't in that game. That was actually an FA Cup game from pre-season before, things like that. So you kind of, it melds into one. So I think the research was really important in terms of pinning down almost just the real detailed, Chad, of the seasons. So actually, like, what happened in each game. So that provides, I suppose, the structure, if you like. Then it was about putting it into something that is readable, I guess, because no one necessarily wants to just read about stats. So it was about telling a story at that point. And how I sort of tried to frame it was firstly around this idea of the choice between winning a trophy and finishing fourth, but also with the beginnings in '92 of the Premier League and what that meant and what that signified, I suppose, in terms of the changes at Villa. So it was all about sort of having a bit of a structure that followed, that took in all the information about the games, but also told the story of the time as well. And there's some sort of fairly, related chapters that aren't about the League Cup in the book. So, for example, there's a chapter about the end of standing on the Holt end, for example, which was a really important.
That's interesting.
Part of the story. Well, yeah, because obviously, post Hillsborough, the Premier League's regulations, it really about those things that defined the seasons beyond just the cup wins. So it's very much about that period of time. So it's about getting all the kind of the factual stuff, then getting it into that sort of narrative, and that's what takes time. I suppose the actual writing of it was fairly kind of not quick exactly, but once you kind of know, or certainly how I work is once I know what it is I'm wanting to say, I can say it fairly quickly. So the preparation is the big stuff, and I think that then obviously when you've written it, it goes through various. I'm very lucky. My publisher is Pitch Publishing. Do a lot of sports books, and they obviously proofread it, they edit it for me. Send me back.
Was it your first book?
Yeah, and possibly the only one, Chad. Who knows? But yeah, it was my first book. So I do bits of writing for lots of people, but like shorter form stuff for magazines and things. But yeah, it was my first book. So if I'm honest, Chad, I didn't know what I was doing. People would say, "Oh, have you thought about this?" And I think, "Well, no, I haven't thought about that. I've never done it before." So it's a massive learning curve. I'm not sure if it makes me want to do it again or not, but we'll see. We'll see how this one goes.
When writing a book, people don't realise how much hard work goes into it.
Absolutely, Chad. And it's getting all those things right, because when you're writing about something like a football club, that people are going to be reading it, and if you've made a slight mistake about, I don't know, who was on the substitutes bench in the fourth round of the League Cup away at Stockport,
You get slated.
Someone's going to say, "Well, now hold on a minute. No, Mark Draper wasn't on the bench. It was, So you've got to really make sure that it's spot on." And I mean, I'm sure maybe someone somewhere would find a mistake, but that's obviously where the publishers help as well, because they, at one, I had some corrections back at one point, and I'd listed a lineup for a game, but only mentioned 10 players, not 11. So it's really good that because often you get so used to reading your own work and you kind of miss stuff. So you get someone else to look at it, and then they can really kind of guide you a little bit and think, right, think about this, think about that.
So how did the journey of you supporting Aston Villa, how did it start for you as a Villa fan?
As I say, I mean, in terms of football, like Italia '90 was massive to me. I was 8, and I'd never really been that into football. But Italia '90 was I just loved it, and I actually loved Cameroon and Roger Milla, and England beat them in the quarterfinals.
That was a great tournament.
Oh, it was.
It
really captured my imagination. I remember playing in the school playground with a tennis ball, and everyone wanted to be Gascoigne and Lineker. So it was that's sort of where my interest in football started. And I remember thinking, oh well, Gascoigne and Lineker play for Spurs, so maybe I should be a Spurs fan. And my dad said to me, "Why do you want to be a Spurs fan? You live in the West Midlands." So which was true. So he said, "Well, look, we'll go and watch some games." And the first game we went to was Villa, and that was it, Chad. I remember that day so much. The things that the sights, the sounds. It was very, very different stadium to what it is now. And we sat in the old, what is now the Doug Ellis, the old Whitton.
And did you stand?
No, well, I did at points. Yeah, I mean, we tended, when my dad took me and my sister, we'd tend to sit in the what is now the Doug Ellis. So it was just a one-tier Whitton Lane at that point. When I was a little bit older and then I had season tickets, we were in the whole end. But yeah, I mean, it was, but yeah, and never kind of looked back really. So that was 1990, 1991. And then really started kind of.
Do you know what you were? Was it David Platt?
So Platt played one more season after Italia '90, because obviously he'd had a breakout time in Italy. He then played one more year for Villa and then went off to Bari. So that it was the tail end of Platt. And then obviously players at the time that did sort of last a little bit into then the era that the book covers. So you like Paul McGrath, Nigel Smith, players like that. Dwight York was also around as a very young guy. Cyril Regis, Tony Daly, those sorts of players. So there was
some talented players.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see, there is a little bit in the book about kind of beginnings of sort of 1990 to 1992, and you can see that trajectory of the players that Atkinson started to bring in that would kind of challenge for the league and then win that first League Cup, but then that Brian Little would almost really kind of go back to square one and completely change the team for the 96 final. So there was a big change of players in that time. And I think the type of player, Chad, as I mentioned, it's kind of relates to the Premier League and how much that changed things because, Savo Milosevic in 1996.
Milosevic,
seemed a very exotic type player, whereas, 94 was perhaps your more Dean Saunders, Ray Houghton, that sort of player. So I think the changes at Villa kind of mirrored what was changing in the wider football world as well.
Yeah, not the likes of Daniel Atkinson is something no longer with us.
Yeah, well, there's a lot, Chad. There's a lot of players at that time. I mean, Dalian obviously.
And Ugo Egiog.
I was just going to mention him, Big Hugo, who was probably, if I had to pick someone, was probably my favourite player. As a younger supporter.
Yeah.
I mean, he was around in '94. Then obviously played in '96. Was a sort of a real big piece of the side. But yeah, Hugo was fantastic and just like an absolute powerhouse of a player. And I just so sad.
A great physicality.
Yeah.
That's what I like about him as well.
Yeah. No, he's brilliant.
Yeah, being blessed with some great players.
Yeah,
over the years. But through that period, especially, from 1992, then you go all the way through the 80s, then into the 90s then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a real long line of players that really sort of, came to sort of define Villa. I do wonder though, Chad, how much winning a trophy kind of adds to that for certain players. And you kind of think of, someone like John McGinn now, who has served the club amazingly from the Championship through to captaining us to a Champions League quarter final. Absolutely integral. But imagine that if he lifts the FA Cup in May, like that solidifies his legacy. And I think that is sometimes the difference in the sense of players that obviously have a real impact. But if you can get that trophy, that mark in history, I think that just absolutely cements that legacy. So fingers crossed there.
If you look at the likes of John McGinn and Tyrone Mings, since the Championship days, they've been on a journey with us. It's been a journey. Yeah. And for me, that would top it off.
It would. And it would.
Their careers.
Yeah. And they would, those images go down in history, and I think, if you think about, 1994, the captain was Kevin Richardson, who, fantastic player, had won league titles with Arsenal, won things with Everton, came to Villa, not exactly at the end of his career, but, sort of coming towards that. Now he was a brilliant servant for Villa and Ron Atkinson, and I think he went something like 50 games without ever missing one in at one stage. But the fact that he was able to lift that League Cup just meant that image of him lifting that is then part of history. Do you know what I mean? If he hadn't have done that,
Yeah.
people would fondly remember him. But it does make a difference, I think, to that lasting legacy.
Well, also, I've actually interviewed Sean Teal before.
Oh, brilliant!
Sean Teal, he's a great guy. He is. I enjoyed interviewing him.
He's fantastic, isn't he? I've been lucky enough to meet him myself a couple of times. He's, a massive part of that. Certainly, the '94 win. Obviously him and McGrath at the back, and some very iconic images of in the semi-final, the second leg at Villa Park when he scored against Tranmere and his celebration. Bit of a shame because he was not really around by '96, and I don't think he didn't fit into. Yeah, I think there was some injuries. I think as well he didn't quite fit into Brian Little's. Brian Little wanted to play 3 at the back, and I think he felt that Teal didn't quite fit into that, so it ended up being McGrath, Southgate, and Ehiog. But certainly, in that '94, Sean Teal was immense. Him and McGrath, what a pairing.
Let's go to the next question. How would you compare Aston Villa's success from the 1990s to today's current position?
Yeah, I mean it's a really tough one, chap, because personally, I just loved that time of winning those 2 trophies, because I genuinely believe that nothing comes close to that. However, now as a 43-year-old, with a 13-year-old son who comes with me every week to Villa Park, we've seen Champions League games. We've seen wonderful occasions of qualifying for Europe. We've seen great wins against top sides, and that has all been really special as well. I just feel that we need that trophy win to validate it a little bit, And I think that it would be a real shame if, I don't know, in 30 years' time, Chad, someone else is writing a book about Unai Emery, and we haven't won something just to really kind of put that gloss on it. But I wouldn't knock it. I mean, the past, really, I would say the past 3 seasons of under Unai have been out of this world, and I would never.
It's incredible.
When I first took my lad.
It's completely transformed the club.
And you wouldn't have first took my lad in the Championship. Yeah. I mean, I just wouldn't have, I wouldn't have predicted if I think, I first took my son in the Championship, and we played our first home game in the Championship was against Rotherham. Jack scored a late goal, and I think Rudy Gestede scored a couple. And if you'd have said to me then, well, in 2025, you'd be in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, you'd probably thought I was bonkers. But so it's been amazing. I suppose I just want, there's a whole generation of Villa fans that are younger than me who haven't really seen us win a trophy, and I think that
it's like me.
Well, yeah, Chad, yeah. You were born the year we last won something. I think that is a real shame. For all the wonderful memories that the past couple of seasons have given us, winning a trophy will top that, no matter what anyone says.
Go on, with Unai Emery. He's not going to be at Villa forever, so we need to make the most of him while he's still here.
Absolutely. And he will. I mean, he'll be desperate to win something, won't he? He's always, wherever he's gone, he's wanted to win trophies. And I think that is, we've got a real chance of that this season, Chad, haven't we?
And what could it be? Champions League or FA Cup? Who knows?
Well, who knows? Both, Chad, both.
Or both, yeah.
Can you imagine?
You got to dare to dream.
About that.
Because as fans, you want to dream as fans. I don't think at the
Well,
moment, as a Villa fan, we're in
and that's
dreamland.
what Unai's let us do, isn't it? Because we
Yeah.
can. You know what I mean? We're going into a quarter final of the Champions League, against
PSG.
a wonderful side. But you know what? There's no one around Bodymore Heath will be thinking that we're making up the numbers. We'll be competing. There's no doubt about that. We've got a wonderful opportunity in the FA Cup, and let's face it, we're not cut adrift in the league. And I think that there is absolute opportunity to challenge for 4th and 5th place. I think the results this weekend have been good for Villa, really, and I think if we can negotiate the demands of that Champions League quarter final around the league games at that time, I think we will absolutely be competitive. So, what a great time to be a Villa fan,
Yeah.
Chad.
I don't think on our day we can beat anybody. We can't beat anyone.
And that was what, sort of going back to the book, particularly the 96 side, that was a season, we won the League Cup, Chad, but we got to the semi-final of the FA Cup where Liverpool beat us at Old Trafford, and finished 4th in the league. So that was one hell of a season under Little.
That's a great season.
It was. I mean, fourth didn't mean what it means now. So, but it was still a huge achievement. And I think that actually that's the sort of season that I think we're in at the moment. And if we could win something, but have those real markers of progress in all those competitions, that is, real achievement. So, fingers crossed.
Going back to the 1990s, who was your favourite Aston Villa player during that period?
It's a really tough one. I mean, we mentioned Hugo earlier, and I did love Hugo. I think I'm just whittling them down in my head. I mean, I think David Atkinson I was a huge fan of, and Dean Saunders, their partnership particularly.
Yeah.
I think Hugo. I think Mark Bosnich was, across a lot of the 90s was. Well, it's only now with Emmy that there's anyone comes close to Bosnich for me, really. You got Paul McGrath, Andy Townsend. I think if I really had to pick someone, though, you know what? It might be Ian Taylor, Chad. So Ian Taylor.
Oh, good shout.
I just think for me embodied everything about Aston Villa. Now that obviously he's a Villa fan, which helped, and I think that was a really important part of that story. But I think when he came in, he just added something a little bit different, that box to box, scored some crucial goals.
Yeah.
And you could just tell it meant the world to him to be out there every week pulling on that.
That's what you want.
It is, isn't it? Because that's, we're all looking at that thinking, God, how lucky is he, And I think that he absolutely owned that. And I think, you know what, if I had to really pick one, it probably would be Ian Taylor, and it's great that he's around the club still now and a big part of things. So yeah,
Ian Taylor. All of his passion.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. What? Do you remember? I remember his last game, and it was pouring with rain. There's those very famous pictures of him holding a badge and saluting the whole end, and he did. He loved it, and he gave everything, and that's, as fans, what we want, isn't it?
Ian Taylor, you can think of today, he's still heavily involved with the fan base.
Yeah, goes out on the European trips, doesn't he, and leads the singing and the bars and all that sort of thing. So, which is great as well, isn't it? Because he just shows that connection that he has with the club.
It's nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to come to an interesting question. So since the transitional period in football in the 1990s, where do you see Aston Villa standing in English football now compared to then?
Yeah, so much has changed, hasn't it, Chad? I mean, I think for me, I think things are beginning to change again, actually, because for a long time, I mean, when we were winning the League Cup in the 90s, there wasn't this idea of a big six or anything like that, really. There were established clubs. Liverpool had won a lot in the 80s. United were beginning to sort of win things, but it was more of an even playing field, in my opinion. I think that the Premier League allowed a situation to happen where this idea of a big six was formed, which I think
Yeah.
hasn't been massively healthy for English football. But you know what, Chad? I think that is beginning to change. And I think that it is about Villa, but it's also about Newcastle. This season, it's about
Nottingham
Forest.
Forest?
Yeah, because it's about these teams challenging that order. And actually, when you look at it, if you imagine, Newcastle, obviously we're in the Champions League this year. Last year, Newcastle were. Forest, it looks like they're going to be next year. That is going to force people to reevaluate this really old-fashioned now idea of this big six.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm all for that. And I will always, I wanted Newcastle to win yesterday. And there was a lot of debate on social
Me too,
media.
yeah.
Why do you want Newcastle to win? Because you know what? It's good. It's good for English football if different people are winning things. Because we need to get away from this idea that Manchester United and Spurs are somehow part of like a big six clubs, and all this sort of thing. So I think that in terms of our standing within that, I think we are really at the forefront of challenging that, and I think that's a great position for Villa to be in.
Well, you look, for example, at Manchester City, it gets boring with the same teams winning all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, it's not. No one really Well, yeah, I guess Manchester City fans enjoyed it to a point, but I mean, ultimately, that's what you want: is that you want competitive opportunities, but you want an opportunity. You want to be able to think, you know what, my team can win something this year. It's not just about staying up, or finishing 14th. It's that level of competition, and I think that we're starting to see on a bit. There's always been oddities, hasn't there? Less the league, for example. But I think what we're starting to see now is a bit more of a consistency in terms of teams sort of challenging that status quo.
Okay. But what it is with all that, we need to break the cycle. And what I'd like to see is as well, with some consistency. The likes of like Villa competing every season.
Yeah.
Like the top 5, not the top 6, top 4.
Yeah, and consistency is the right word, Chad, and that's what, in some form, ourselves, Newcastle, we've got to be doing, because that's the difference, isn't it? Because otherwise, it can just seem as a one-off, But
Well, I think in the 1990s, it sort of dominated the likes of Man United with Alex Ferguson. Then you had Arsenal with RC Wenger. They were sort of the big teams back in the 90s.
Yeah,
And
and
the early thousands.
Yeah, and really strong managers, who transform their clubs. And guess what? That's what Unai's doing, Chad. Because let's be clear, it's not just about him on a Saturday picking the team. He is transforming the club. And I think if you look at clubs that have had that consistent success, it is about that stability that managers bring. And without going on about Newcastle, they're not a bad example as well. Eddie Howe's been there for a significant amount of time, Champions League qualification, won the trophy yesterday. So I think that, it's about giving people the keys to the kingdom. And I think certainly, Unai has that full backing at the moment to do just that.
Guys, with Unai Emery, he's got a good structure. up behind him. And ever since, Aston Villa is an upward trajectory.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I mean, it's just, yeah, phenomenal. Phenomenal. Just need that trophy, Chad.
That's all we need now. That's what we need. Celebrate at Wembley or in Munich.
Oh, we've got a dream, Chad. We've got a dream.
So do you think Aston Villa have a good chance of getting a trophy this season?
I do. I do. I think that the FA Cup offers a really, really good opportunity for that.
That's realistic, I think.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, as we said earlier, no one should be taking anything for granted
Yep.
about the quarterfinal. But let's face it, if we could have chosen who we were going to play, we would have chosen Preston. So, you know, there's a reason for that.
Yep.
I think we need to go there and we need to win that game. And I think then in the last four at Wembley, anything can happen. And I don't think any of the teams that we could potentially play in a potential semi-final massively concern me. You know, probably the teams that have gone out. You know, I was more worried about Newcastle and Wolves maybe away and things like that. But you know what? I think that offers a real good opportunity. And I think the Champions League, you know, I mean, you know, people will think, you know, he's mad. Me, what's he on about? Winning the Champions League. But, you know, we are in the last 8, you know? I mean, that hasn't happened.
But you know, anyway, he has actually managed PSG before. So he can do his homework.
Yeah. And they will absolutely be prepared. And I think that don't underestimate, Chad, the power of that second leg being at Villa Park as well, because I think that is, you know, we've seen this season what a phenomenal atmosphere we can create when we want to, and I think that, you know, as long as we're in touch, you know, after the first leg, I would absolutely back us at Villa Park, and it would just be a special night, won't it, mate? It really would.
I got the tickets.
Yeah, I know, all done. I mean, I'm glad they didn't mess around, actually. Just want to think, yeah, all sorted. I mean, it's just going to be, yeah. Can't wait, Chad.
And we shouldn't fear anybody.
No, I'd agree. Maybe Newcastle away. That's the only. I mean, when was that, I'll tell you on there, but no, you're right. I'm being silly, but I mean, we should have, and there's no reason to. You know, you look at that squad now. People are back. People are back from injuries. I mean, it's like the Bruges game, and like the bench was phenomenal. You know, and you think,
what a
bench. Well, yeah,
I mean,
it's coming on at half time, but then you think, you know, Malin and Garcia weren't even on there. Weren't even there. You know, because they're not in the squad. So I think there is. Yeah, there's clearly a very strong squad now, and we just got to utilise that to absolutely end the season winning every possible game we can.
Because I like us to sign Asensio and Marcus Rashford on a permanent maybe. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think Asensio I can see. I'm not sure about Rashford.
Rashford.
Not that I think. I mean, I think he's done great, and he's probably done. You know, he's probably looked a bit more interested than I thought he might. I just think is that it's very obvious that Rashford completely changes the style that Emery plays, and it's whether he wants to go wholesale into that. I think it serves a purpose at the moment because it's, you know, it's a short-term thing. But if Villa were to sign Rashford, it would almost be you and I saying, right, we're going to play in a very different way now, which I can't quite see. But what do I know, ultimately?
And going to Marco Asensio, if you came to Villa, it'll all depend on if he could take a wage cut and if we finish in Europe for the Champions League.
Yeah. I mean, that is going to be the big draw, isn't it, for any player, is that they want to play in the Champions League. And, that obviously is still on the table at the moment. But, I'm always a bit of a believer. We just got to enjoy these players for what we've got at the moment, and the impact Asensio's had, and I suspect will continue to have over the end of this season. Let's enjoy that, and then we'll see what happens in the summer, Chad.
And with the FA Cup, if you're going to win the FA Cup, this is the best season to do it. And even in the final, if we got to the final, we play Man City, I think we could actually beat them. Because Man City this season can be nowhere near their best.
I'd agree. I think we can cause any team problems. I have no doubt about that. And it appears, touch wood, that we seem to have stiffened up a little bit in terms of defence. So, but yeah, anyone we play, I mean, it's like PSG. They've got some great players. And I'm not a big fan of Bradley Barker, but we've got some great players as well. And I mean, they won't enjoy Morgan Rogers running at them. And Ollie working that back line, all those sorts of things, So I think it's, let's, we are going to be playing some good teams in these games, because good teams get far in competitions, but we are also a good team, aren't we? And I think that's what we need to remember and have faith in.
And then comes the final question.
Yeah.
So what is it like witnessing Aston Villa winning those trophies back in 94 and 96 at the old Wembley? What was it like seeing it happen?
It was just beautiful, Chad. It really was. And I think 94 particularly, because it was the first one I'd witnessed, and it was just real emotional stuff, Chad, because you can't almost describe it, because it's different from winning a game, or even a semi-final, or a game that qualifies you for it, but because you're watching your team walk up and collect that trophy, and it's that shared love and that shared celebration that is just absolutely wonderful. I think 96 was different because it was so close to 94, and it was almost, we've kind of, it was very different as well, because we weren't expected to beat United in 94. Everyone thought that they would walk away with it. But in 96, we were favourites to beat Leeds. And I think that made a difference as well. And it was still wonderful, but just wasn't quite as good as 2 years previously. But both times, it's that collective thing. And I think that's what I love about being a Villa fan, is that we all have this great shared experience, and we can talk about our memories and what we love about the club, and we can see each other at Villa Park and talk about it and go on social media. All this, we build this community, don't we? But then seeing that community come together at a final and a trophy being lifted, it's like I said earlier, it's that sort of that validation of like, this is what it means,
Because as a football fan, history is very important. Like, you need to hold on to nostalgia. It makes the club what it is today.
It does, Chad. It does, and we've all got our own piece in that history. And I think I've said before to people about players and managers that come and go and might have a really small impact, but they have an impact and they're part of that Aston Villa story. And I think that is such a wonderful thing, if in the book I talk about an FA Cup quarter final against Nottingham Forest, which Franz Carr, if you remember him, was a winger we'd signed from Forest, and he scored it. We won 1-0 away from home. he scored the goal. Great goal. His only goal for Villa. But you know what? He's part of that story, and I think that's really important. Is that, however, whether you're a fan, a player, a manager, we all have a part in that story of Aston Villa Football Club, and that's a great thing to be part of, isn't it?
Cool. It's Villa chooses you. It chooses you.
Yeah, that's what they say.
But actually, are you seeing the 150th wall? I signed up for that.
Oh, with the plaque.
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah, no, yeah. Me and my no, I shouldn't. It's a surprise actually. Probably won't be moment. I have looked at that. Yeah, I'll stop talking about it actually. But yeah, no, it's I think that's a really good good idea. And they did it in the past at the bottom of the Trinity on the flagstones. I think that again, and you know, people like to be part of that, don't they? You know, and talk about it and share those memories. So yeah, it'd be good when that is. I think it's being put up fairly soon, isn't it, Chad?
Yeah. So then before I finish the podcast, so everyone who wants to get the book, where can they find the book?
Okay, so available in all good bookshops. So it's called Only the Real Thing, which is based on a kind of the Coke slogan at the time, because obviously it involves around the Coca-Cola Cup.
Yes.
So Only the Real Thing, Aston Villa and the Coca-Cola Cup, 1993 to 1996. It's published by Pitch Publishing, so you can get it if you're shopping online. You can buy it from Amazon and all of those sort of usual online outlets. There is plenty of stock in Birmingham Waterstones, for example, and Waterstones around the Midlands. There's actually I've signed some copies in the Birmingham branch, so they're there for people to have. If people are struggling, they can get in touch with me direct, and I can arrange things as well. My X handle is under my name there, so if anyone wants to get in touch about anything, obviously they can. But yeah, really appreciate all the support so far from the Villa community, and some really lovely comments and memories that people have had around that time and remembering it through the book. And so yeah. So thank you, Chad, for having me on and giving me the opportunity.
No problem. Well, thank you. You've been a great guest. I really enjoyed that interview.
Well, that's great, Chad. It's been a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to give it a like. Make sure to give it a share. And give us a good review if you're listening via audio. Thank you so much, Ivan, for your time.
Pleasure, Chad.
I'm going to wrap up this episode with Villa Forever and Up the Villa.